want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Welcome to hour number 3 of a Football Friday live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. We will continue to preview the Week 15 NFL Sunday slate later on in this third and final hour. Our Week 15 Pick 6, our best bets for the weekend that is to come around the National Football League. But on a Football Friday, it's not just the NFL. And although there is not a full slate of college football tomorrow, there is a huge game, a rivalry that is one of the best you will see in college football because of the pageantry and the tradition. Bitter foes tomorrow, friends off the field, and teammates for many years to come. The 125th all-time meeting between Army and Navy. We'll break it down here in this third hour. We'll talk the start of bowl season tomorrow in college football. And Joe, a small break from a Football Friday as well. NBA Cup semifinal Saturday in Sin City. An early look at those matchups and 8 games around the association tonight as well.
Yeah, we got a little something for everyone except in the NHL. We only have one game. I can't figure out their schedule at all here this year, Ben. But that's fine. They have their way. I'm also looking forward to a huge college basketball weekend. Exam week has come and gone, so we're back to a lot of games coming up tomorrow.
A lot of games this weekend in college basketball. Great game tonight in Lincoln, Nebraska. Big Ten battle between the Huskers and the Hoosiers. We will get to that in just a little bit. But, Joe, to start off this third and final hour, the 125th Army-Navy game for the second ever time in Landover, Maryland, at the home of the Commanders outside the nation's capital. It is Northwest Stadium. And unlike the previous 124, this one might be as good as we have ever seen. I will give you all the historical data, the stats, and the trends that you need to know about the battle of the cadets and the midshipmen tomorrow afternoon. But first, we wanted to hear from you. It is a rivalry game. There is no doubt about it. If you are passionate about either side, you are hoping to sing second. You are hoping to say the words, go Army, beat Navy, or the inverse, go Navy, beat Army. But maybe you're just there for the tradition. And maybe you're just rooting for the United States of America tomorrow? That was the question to all of you and Fade the Public. What a great Fade the Public poll question this is. Which team do you root for in the Army-Navy game? Is it Army? Is it Navy? Is it both? It may be some recency bias is impacting how the public voted for this one at SportsGrid on Twitter. I really hope we are not overlooking the fine work of the Naval Academy and those mids on the seas. However, Army, Navy, or both, most of the public, Joe, more than 42% backing both. They are hoping that both teams have fun and play a great Army-Navy game tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, and that's a great answer. You are rooting for both here, but I promise you the players on both sidelines will not like that answer. I can assure you that until after the game is over. But it's hard not to root for both of these teams this year, Ben, given, the changes, the evolution of this triple option and what these teams and coaches have been able to do. I mean, you're talking Army, Navy have spent time inside the top 25 this year. Been a long time since teams running I formation and triple option and wishbone ever graced the top 25 in this country, Ben. But both of those teams have done it. And I think this is going to be one of the better games that we have seen so far in recent memory when these two teams play.
Joe, when both teams were ranked earlier in the season, it was the first time both were featured in the same AP Top 25 since 1960. Both teams got off to a 4-0 start in the same season for the first time since World War II. Also a pretty good year for the United States Armed Forces. There were so many historic marks of this season for both the Black Knights and the Midshipmen, and it continues into the Army-Navy game. Army is coming off a conference championship for the first time in the 131 years of this Army football program played up in West Point. Sure, they have not been a member of a league for much of that 131, but still it is worth noting. This is the most combined wins between the Black Knights and the Mids ever entering an Army-Navy game. 11-1 Army, 8-3 Navy, 19 combined victories between the two. That is the most ever. It is the first time since 2017 that these two teams will battle for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. That is the matchup among our three service academies, and both Army and Navy beat Air Force pretty good earlier this season. It is the first time, Joe, since 2017 that both the Black Knights and the Mids have already accepted a bowl bid entering the Army-Navy game. And as we look at the numbers and see Army as a 6.5-point favorite and a total at 39.5, it is the highest over-under in an Army-Navy game since 2019. What do we expect in Landover on the actual football field tomorrow between the cadets and the midshipmen?
Well, I think it's going to be a great game because you have two teams that have been undervalued most of the year, that have made, they have evolved this triple option. They've evolved the offenses. Both teams capable, Ben, we've watched them, and both quarterbacks very capable of that big explosive play, right? Being able to get the 80-yard touchdown run or even the pass that goes to the house because they're so worried about stopping the run. Both teams remain very run heavy, but the new wrinkles involve these quarterbacks being able to fake the option, step back, and throw to wide open receivers all over the field. This game has failed to go over 40 points since 2013. But when you look at the new concepts, the different types of personnel on offense that they're rolling out there with wide receivers and tight ends and running backs. I mean, listen, we just watched Army blow out Tulane in the American Athletic Championship game, right? And that comes, 3 weeks after Tulane blanked Navy, in Navy, in fact. So I think, listen, they're a 6.5-point favorite. I think Army is the better team. but call me crazy here, Ben. The way both these teams can have explosive offensive plays is, to me, looks like an over if I've ever seen it. And I usually just bet it blindly under. I'm rooting for an over. And if it does go over, I am going Army team total over because I do think they win. And I think they will go over and score 30 points.
You can see it there in the team comparison. Both teams are averaging better than 32 points per game. Both still run the football as well as you will find around the nation, both running it 75% of the time or more. Nobody runs it more or better than Army, more than 314 yards per game, the best rushing offense in FBS college football. But the difference being the points per game allowed. Navy more than 23, Army just 15, one of the 10 best defenses in the country. Army also allows only 104 yards per game on the ground. The Naval Academy allows nearly 160. We'll talk a little bit more Army-Navy on the other side, but my best bet for this game is a bet that I tried to give out to all of you last week entering the AAC title game against Tulane. Bryson Daly, multiple rushing touchdowns. He is Army's quarterback. He has scored 29 rushing TDs this year, tied for the most nationally alongside Ashton Genty. And for him to hit Pater twice, which is basically betting Army to get even close to their team total and score 2 touchdowns, is even money plus 100. A little bit more on Army-Navy, the Heisman Trophy race that will be crowned tomorrow in bowl season next.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this bet than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. It's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The 125th Army-Navy game on Saturday in Landover, Maryland. At the home of the Commanders, it's Northwest Stadium. And, Joe, it's the second time it's ever been played directly outside of the nation's capital. It is going to be a great game between Army and Navy on Saturday. A game with the focus of college football, where the pageantry is on full display. I mentioned Bryson Daly to hit Pater twice A number last week against Tulane in the AAC championship game that was plus 220. He scored 4 times. A number that earlier this week was plus 120. If I lived in the great Garden State of New Jersey, I would have bet it immediately. It is now minus 115. Still think the number is justified because I do expect Bryson Daly to score twice. When you look at Navy's side, though, Blake Horvath, their quarterback, is healthy, expects to play, and he is as dynamic as you will see. Not quite the runner that Bryson Daly is, but 13 rushing touchdowns this year and can also air it out just a little bit. Navy averaging more than 125 passing yards per game this season, the first time in nearly a decade since 2016.
It's kind of crazy, Ben. Both these teams top 5 in red zone offenses and finishing drives. They don't spend a whole lot of time kicking, Ben. Usually they're going for it, and I expect a lot of that here as well in this game. But maybe less special teams, way more going for it, and one of these defenses is going to come up with a big play at some point in this game, and it could very well be Army here on maybe a defensive touchdown might not be a bad look either at a pretty plus price.
In the game for Navy against Notre Dame, they turned the football over so many times, which is not what you would expect out of a disciplined service academy. Both teams got hammered by Notre Dame, but against like competition, as Joe said, Army put up 35 in the AAC championship game against Tulane last week. Navy was held scoreless, no Blake Horvath in that game. They have played more common opponents throughout this year, including Air Force. Navy won by 27. Army with no Bryson Daly, only 17. Again, it should be a great day. It is part of the pageantry at the end of a college football regular season, past conference championship weekend, past selection Sunday, as we await the college football playoff next weekend. That, of course, is capped off in New York City on Saturday night with the 2024 Heisman Trophy ceremony. The other college football awards were given out last night. Travis Hunter making history, becoming the first FBS player ever to win the Biletnikoff Award, best wide receiver in the country. I think Nick Nash, who won the Triple Crown for San Jose State, might have an argument, but still, Travis Hunter elite this season as a wideout. Also won the Chuck Bednarik Award for the best defensive player in the country, despite not being a finalist for the Jim Thorpe Award, which is the best defensive back. Award voting in college football make sense. But Travis Hunter in pole position to win the Heisman Trophy tomorrow night, Joe. Minus 10,000 is his price to strike the pros on a December Saturday night in the Big Apple.
Yeah, it's and listen, well-deserved, and not like we didn't think this was coming here. But it has been that kind of elite athlete, elite football player on both sides of the ball. It has been impressive, and we have not seen the likes of this in a long, long time, since actually his coach, in fact, was the last guy I remember making an impact on both sides of the ball in college football. Yeah. He's a phenom, and we may not see it again for another 20 or so years. So well-deserved, and he could cap it off on Saturday tomorrow night there, Ben, with the ultimate hardware.
Well-deserved for Travis Hunter, who has the second most receiving touchdowns in the sport. He is the 6th leading receiver at the FBS level, second most in a power conference, and he is elite on that side and defensively. Most pass breakups this year in the Big 12. Has the 3rd best cover grade among any FBS cornerbacks this season, according to PFF. And yes, Ashton Jeanty is well-deserving of the Heisman Trophy hardware as well. Won the Doak Walker Award. Doak Campbell? No, Doak Campbell is Florida State. Always get it confused. Doak Walker for the best running back in the country. And I will just say this, Joe, I tested you with some trivia earlier on before we even started today. Ashton Jeanty did win the Maxwell Award in the last decade, since 2014. 8 of the 10 winners of the Maxwell also won the Heisman Trophy. Only twice has the winner of the Maxwell Award not won the Heisman Trophy hardware. 2018, Tua Tagovailoa won the Maxwell Award. Kyler Murray won the Heisman. Last year, Michael Penix Jr. won the Maxwell Award. Jaden Daniels won the Heisman, but still, at least according to the odds makers, in a narrative-based award, it is hard to quantify. Travis Hunter remains that hefty favorite.
Yeah, and yes, and it looks like we could have now, 3 years in a row here, Ben, or 3 of the last 5 or 7 years that we have seen this happen. And can I tell you something? It's kind of hard to argue that one person should win both the Maxwell and the Heisman there, because there's been more than one unbelievable season in college football. And Ashton Genty, in his own right, very, very worthy of the Maxwell Award. Also, I mean, I wouldn't argue with him winning the Heisman either here, Ben, if we didn't know what the odds were.
He will be, one of these guys will be the third non-quarterback to win the Heisman Trophy Award for the first time since 2009. It will be the first non-Alabama non-quarterback winner of the Heisman Trophy since Reggie Bush way back in 2005. Quickly, Joe, a couple of bowl games begin tomorrow as well. Celebration Bowl. It's a matchup of the SWAC champs in the MEAC Bowl. That is between Jackson State and South Carolina State. Should be a good game. South Carolina State, 2.5-point favorite. Total stands at 53.5. And we also have our first bowl game at the FBS level, the Salute to Veterans Bowl. Western Michigan and South Alabama. The Jags, more than a touchdown favorite, and the total stands at 57.5. Gio Lopez, the young freshman quarterback for Major Applewhite in South Alabama, he's coming back next year. That's big news. NBA Cup weekend ahead next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Tonight in the association around the NBA, there are 8 games on this Friday. We'll take a look at a few perhaps in just a moment. But tomorrow night in Sin City, it is the second annual in-season competition reaching its Final Four. The NBA Cup semifinals in 2024 for a spot in the championship game to battle for the cup on Tuesday evening, also in Las Vegas. Here are the two games and where it stacks up on semifinal Saturday night in Viva Las Vegas. I said Saturday night, but that includes Saturday afternoon, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Early start out there in the desert. Not a great draw for teams maybe trying to hang around and enjoy all that the Strip might have to offer. The Bucks take on the Hawks. Milwaukee, 3.5-point favorite, Joe, against Atlanta. Total stands at 229 and a hook. From the Eastern Conference semifinal, who will play for the Cup on Tuesday night?
Yeah, and I think this is a interesting game, but we also have been we've been trying to tell everyone about Atlanta for the last couple of weeks here, Ben, and we even looked at their future price to win this Cup altogether, and we kept saying all the value at 21 to 1. Like, you've got to be kidding me here. Most people still associate this Atlanta Hawks team with, they don't play any defense, they're no good, they can't score. Well, yeah, no, they have won 8 of their last 9. And you know why they've won 8 of those last 9 games? Because of defense. They are finally healthy, and they've been one of the best defensive teams in the NBA going into this game here. Plus, they already beat the Bucks, week and a half ago? They are, when I tell you, a very dangerous team who plays defense, and with Trae Young playing facilitator and not hero ball, the Hawks, to me, are very, very dangerous. The only problem is, Ben, we heard from Giannis the other night after they squeaked by Orlando, who had nobody. He sounds like he really wants to win this game, and he wants to win the Cup, and he's not happy about the way it ended last year against Indiana in the NBA Cup.
Yep.
So we're talking about a very motivated Bucks team, which makes this a big, big time heavyweight fight, I think, going into it.
And we shall see, Joe, just exactly how motivated they are in these spots, right? The atmosphere feels like it should be big for the NBA Cup, the incentivizing that the NBA has done for these games. The semifinal games, by the way, still count to your regular season record. The NBA Cup title game on Tuesday is the only one that will not reflect in your regular season mark. But, Joe, because the NBA Cup is involved in the regular season, you can look at the moment the Cup started for both of these teams in turning around their slates. Atlanta entered the start of the NBA Cup 4-7. They have now won 10 of their last 13. When you look at where this Milwaukee Bucks team was entering the NBA Cup, they were 2-8. They have won 11 of their last 14. These two teams have used this to turn their season around, and that is a huge, huge thing for both teams entering this matchup. So again, that 229.5 should also be interesting to see, as if these are going to have that playoff type atmosphere, maybe these games stay under, as we saw in our doubleheader on Wednesday night in NBA Cup action. The nightcap in Las Vegas, the Western Conference semi, Oklahoma City and Houston. Could this be a potential playoff matchup that we see later in the year in the Western Conference? The Thunder, Joe, the favorites to win the NBA Cup right now, best team out west, 5.5-point favorite against the Rockets. What do you see in the second of our 2 semifinal games tomorrow night?
I see an interesting defensive battle here, but there's not. What do you say about Oklahoma City here, Ben? I mean, the money's rolling in on them, and I get it. Because I think they're 16-2 straight up when either Holmgren or Hartenstein are on the floor. Obviously, Holmgren's been out now, but Hartenstein back and playing at such a ridiculously high level makes this a tough game for the Rockets. But am I the only one who thinks 213? I don't think we're getting there, Ben. I think this is not going to be a shooting fest, but this is going to be maybe the most physical game of the two that we see.
Yeah, and Joe, when you look at Houston, who won that game in controversial fashion, perhaps, on Tuesday night against Golden State, or Wednesday night, or Tuesday night against Golden State, when you look at that game for Houston, they won 91-90, as low scoring as you will find. Could we see the same for OKC, who stayed under in their NBA Cup quarterfinal game against Dallas? Now back to the NFL Sunday slate in Week 15, up next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
In the final half hour of our final hour, hour number 3 here on this Football Friday on the Early Line, it is devoted to the Week 15 NFL Sunday slate in our weekend pick 6 for you here on the Early Line. He is Joe. I am Ben. Our 6 picks for the weekend go as such. Our favorite anytime touchdown scorer to find the end zone at a good price. A moneyline underdog that might pull off the outright upset, our favorite under of the weekend. Then we will look at an alt line with a sprinkle of plus money, our favorite yardage prop of the weekend, and we combine forces for a 2-leg 6-point teaser that was not even a sweat a week ago. Joe took the Seahawks up to 8.5 as an underdog against the Cardinals. He could have laid 8.5. Seattle won that game 30-18. I took the Pittsburgh Steelers down from a 6.5-point favorite to a pick'em price against the Browns. They won that game by 2 scores. So, as we get ready for Week 15, we dive into the pick 6. Joe, might you please begin with your favorite anytime touchdown scorer of the weekend?
Well, I'm going to go with, I think, where there is value, and I like my chances of him finding the end zone, and that is Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. And we all know that Josh Allen, as we start getting to December, well, he starts running more, doesn't he? And he starts finishing drives on his own. And against this depleted Detroit defense, I expect him to be using his legs a little bit more as well. I mean, listen, he has a rushing TD in 4 straight games, Ben. He's got 6 total in those last 4 games here. We saw what kind of game he had against the Rams. I like it. This time of year, it's all about Josh Allen taking it himself. I think there's going to be an opportunity in this game, maybe not just to get 1, Ben, but maybe to get 2. Josh Allen, anytime touchdown at plus money, I'll take it all day long.
He had 3 last week against the LA Rams. He scored the week prior in the snowy Sunday night game for the Buffalo Bills, as well against the 49ers. In the month of December, even if the game is played indoors at Ford Field in Detroit, Josh Allen's rushing production is always on the uptick. I like that look a lot, Joe. I'm going to go to Isaiah Pacheco at plus 125 for the Chiefs in their matchup against the Cleveland Browns. And here is why. Isaiah Pacheco now will play in his third consecutive game since returning from injured reserve. First game against the Raiders, 7 carries, a little bit more than 40 yards. Last week in the matchup against the Chargers, 14 carries, 55 yards on the ground. He is yet to hit pay dirt, but the production uptick is there. The involvement in the offensive scheme for KC is there. I think he will hit pay dirt on Sunday against Cleveland at plus 125. But even if Pacheco does hit pay dirt, Joe, it does not necessarily mean the Chiefs are going to win, right?
No, I don't necessarily think, touchdowns equate to winning here for the Kansas City Chiefs. Call me crazy here. I think they are very much the Cleveland Browns, a live dog here. They have, and let's face it here, the Chiefs defense has been a little bit suspect here. And Jameis Winston, I think, will have a lot of success throwing the ball all over the place. You know, when you have that bend but don't break defense, you're going to be able to give up some yards. And we've seen the full Jameis experience here. But it's the defense, I think, with Myles Garrett and his ability now, finally healthy, and that secondary with Ward and company back there. I think very much here that they're going to have a chance to win this game, and they're going to have a chance not only to cover this game, rather, but win it outright. I like the Browns as a moneyline underdog this week at a pretty good price there, Ben.
So the Browns have been mathematically eliminated from AFC playoff contention. Cleveland is just a 3-10 football team, but they don't feel just like a 3-win team at times, Joe. They have only covered once in any of their 10 losses this year, but they have played spoiler a ton as an outright underdog with Jameis Winston, as they did to the Ravens as more than a touchdown home underdog, as they did to the Steelers to snap a 5-game win streak for Pittsburgh as a home underdog. Keep an eye on the Browns. The Chiefs have been inventing new ways to skate by, but will that eventually start to catch up to them and bite them you know where? I'm looking at my moneyline underdog in Los Angeles. That would be the Bucs on the road against the Bolts. Tampa as a dog this year, 4-3 against the spread, 2 outright victories. Last year as an underdog, sensational. 9-4 ATS, 6 outright wins. They are catching a full field goal against the LA Chargers. Joe, you mentioned it earlier. The injury report for both teams in this game is not overly optimistic. Justin Herbert has missed time at practice this week. His top target, Ladd McConkey, really hasn't been there either. For the Bucs, a season defined by injury as well. When you look at their practice report injury list, Bucky Irving has not practiced due to a back. Mike Evans still nursing that hamstring. Sterling Shepard hasn't practiced yet this week because of a foot injury. Tristan Wirfs still on the sideline. And Antoine Winfield Jr. now out for at least a few weeks, the outstanding safety for Tampa. So why am I backing the Bucs? Because Baker Mayfield is still there. And if this game becomes a shootout, I like the edges with Tampa Bay trying to hold on to that top spot in the NFC South in front of the Falcons, who play on Monday night. Give me the Bucs outright on Sunday in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I listen, and I think don't be shocked if we get a bunch of points in that game there. I think winner gets the 30, Ben. I think this game flies over the total, but it's kind of hard not to be impressed with Baker. And now you get him at plus money. His teams are never out of it. I like Todd Bowles in this spot with Baker Mayfield to put up a pretty good number against a suspect defense at best.
Yeah, I would agree, Joe. And this Chargers team has been hurting a little bit as well on that defensive side of the football. Our favorite unders of the weekend. Which game, Joe, are you targeting on Sunday?
I'm going to go to the Dolphins and to the Houston Texans. Listen, Dolphins, they average 36 points a game on the road. That's what their road games are. They're 5-1 to the under, going under by an average, Ben, of over 8 points a game. Meanwhile, the Texans, they're 4-1 to the under at home this year. Listen, Tua under in 6 of his last 8 games versus teams over 500. Stroud also 7-3 to the under as a home favorite. To me, the offenses of these two teams are better against worse teams. I think that both of these offenses are going to struggle. We've seen CJ Stroud struggle, and this will be the best defense that Tua will have seen since coming off the concussion protocol. He will be under duress. I think this is a rock fight, and I think the defense of Houston ultimately will win out.
Joe, the Texans coming off a bye have to figure a few things out. They have not been overly impressive this season. In fact, as a favorite with C.J. Stroud as their starter, just 6-10-2 against the spread. You would think maybe they rely on the defense to slow down Miami, who as an underdog, needing outright wins, has only 4 of them in the last 2.5, now nearly 3 years with Mike McDaniel as the head coach. Is 4-16 straight up. The Dolphins as a dog. And if Miami is going to win outright, it's because of the offense. If they do not win outright, it's because Houston's defense did make a stand at home. I'll give you my favorite under on the other side of the break, but what I will tell you is it focuses on the largest spread we have seen this season, 16.5 in favor of Baltimore. There are many different ways to play a game in which a team is expected to win by 3 scores. I'll tell you why on Sunday on the other side of the break, next on the early line.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
We continue our Week 15 Pick 6 live right here on this Football Friday on the early line on SportsGrid. Joe, the largest spread of the weekend, the largest spread so far this season, is nearly a 3-score number, 16.5 points in favor of the Baltimore Ravens on the road, mind you, in MetLife on Sunday against the dismal New York Giants, who are turning things back over to Tommy DeVito because of injury concern around Drew Lock. Good luck to the G-men. The question is not, is Baltimore going to win this game outright? I think we can all agree that is more than likely going to be the case. The question is, can the Ravens cover? I'm not so sure. The Giants have been an underdog a ton in the last 2 years. I think they've only been favored twice in their combined now 30 games. They are, if I do the math correctly here, I think they are 12, 15, and 2 against the spread. Whatever it is, they haven't been terrible as an underdog. So I do think they can keep it within this number. I'm just not entirely sure how I would want to go about betting this game. So I'll look to the Giants team total under 13.5. Again, the Giants starting Tommy DeVito. It was a really nice story last year when he won 3 straight games. But then the NFL caught up. The offense looked awful in his final 2. The offense looked atrocious in DeVito's lone start of this season. In fact, the Giants have lost 8 consecutive games. They have gone under 13.5, which is hard to do. It's just 2 touchdowns in half of those 8 consecutive losses. And mainly, Joe, it's almost a charge and a challenge to this Baltimore defense that ranks bottom 10 in terms of points allowed this year, 24.5 points per game. Can they figure things out defensively out of the bye to start making statements? Because when it comes to the flock season and how success will be defined, it's not a playoff berth. They're more than likely not going to win the AFC North. It is changing the narrative around Lamar Jackson's playoff record. So the offense is going to have to be great. It has been this year, but the defense also must match the call. And I think that starts by making a statement against the New York Giants on Sunday.
Yeah, and listen, there is no doubt. I think Baltimore needs to get this train back on the tracks here any way that it can do, and what is becoming a very tough AFC North right now with Pittsburgh ahead of them. However, you're right, Ben. This number is so obnoxious. It's not. I mean, the Giants have 11 losses, Ben. Only 3 of those losses are by double digits. And that was against Minnesota, Philadelphia, and Tampa a couple of weeks ago. So I don't care who the quarterback is, DeVito, Luck, it won't lock. Who cares? It doesn't make a difference. Yeah. What matters is Dable has these guys playing and playing well, and that defense of Baltimore, like you said, they need to show up and show out. I would definitely lean the Giants here, but I'm with you. I don't know that they get 2 touchdowns. But I don't know that Baltimore runs away with it either. So I think it's a lower scoring game altogether.
The Giants could lose by double digits, mind you, and still cover this number because it is 16.5. 28 times an underdog in 30 games since the start of last year. 12, 15, and 1 against the number are the New York Giants. Our favorite alt line with a sprinkle of plus money, Joe Ranieri. Where are you going?
Alt line, I'm going to go to another game, which should be a lot of fun, right? With 2 teams, I think we labeled it not done yet. Well, no, these 2 teams are definitely done. However, how about Jamar Chase to get 2 or more touchdowns against Tennessee here? We saw, 2 more TDs last week. I mean, what has he got? 15 on the season. He's got, 8 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. Call me crazy with this Titans defense is in bad shape now. They're not getting to the quarterback. Secondary has a ton of injuries. I could see Chase having another one of these epic games here where him and Burrow are playing catch, and that will lead to 2 touchdowns or more in this game at a pretty good price here, Ben.
Joe, the one thing that has never been the issue for the Bengals this season is the offense, nor the connection between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, who had 2 of the 3 passing touchdowns that Joe Burrow threw against the Dallas Cowboys on Monday night. Love that look. I'll go to my alt line, the New England Patriots, and their team total over 23.5. I was looking for a spicy bit of plus money. If you wanted plus 140 for the Pats over their team total of 22.5, that alternate number, it's plus 140. Regular team total for New England, 19.5. Over has the juice at minus 124. And Joe, both you and I kind of think the Patriots are live on Sunday in the desert against Arizona. New England has played 3 games in a row to the over. They have scored at least 22 points in 2 of those 3. Arizona's defense, when it was on that 4-game win streak, was playing really good football. Last few weeks, not nearly as elite, allowing at least 23 points in their last 2. Give me the Patriots to keep this game fun and exciting. I'll go over that alt team total of 23.5 at plus 172. Now, let's go to our favorite yardage props of the weekend. German Henry, which player are you going to be looking at on Sunday?
I'm going to go to a game which I think pretty confident is going to be blowout city, and I'm going to look at Jaden Daniels to go over his passing prop here, Ben. First of all, he's going home of sorts, right? LSU, college. He'll be in New Orleans. The conditions will be ripe. You've got Jake Hayner at quarterback for New Orleans. It feels like this is a game after a much-needed bye week where Daniels is going to throw the ball. He's going to get 300 yards. He also has attempted 30 or more passes now in 5 or 6. So the volume is there, and I think he'll have plenty of opportunities to get 300 yards in this one, more than the 210.5 that they had listed for him.
Here's a spoiler alert for you. The Washington Commanders, at least winning on Sunday in the Big Easy, will be featured in the way that we finish out the Pick 6 on the other side of the break. A 2-leg, 6-point teaser taking the Commanders through 2 very key numbers. We will talk about the end of the Pick 6 and my favorite yardage prop up next on the early line.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoff.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Let's finish out our Sunday slate, Week 15, Pick 6, live right here in our final segment. Over 3 hours on a Football Friday on the early line on SportsGrid. Joe's favorite yardage prop, Jaden Daniels, back out of the bye for Washington, trying to pick up an easy victory in New Orleans on Sunday, over 210.5, his passing yard prop. Joe, we talked about A.J. Brown earlier in the show. We've talked about A.J. Brown a ton throughout this week. The drama between him, wide receiver number 1, and his quarterback, Jalen Hurts, in Philly, despite the Birds winning 9 consecutive games and having an 11-2 record. Philly's passing attack has not been great the last few weeks. Hurts throwing for fewer than 180 yards in each of the previous 3 games for the Eagles. But that drama has been cleared up, as they have told us, in that Eagles locker room. And perhaps with a guarantee that A.J. Brown is going to get the football early, often, all game long against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday in that marquee matchup. But it's not just the narrative, Joe. In fact, I think the odds makers understand the narrative, as A.J. Brown has a receiving yardage total of 80.5, and his quarterback has a number that's around $180. That's ridiculous. You're expecting him to have nearly 50% of the yardage from Jalen Hurts. His number to hit Pater is plus 145. It feels like a very public number. So I'll go to the over longest reception prop for A.J. Brown at 26.5. Over in 6 of 10 games that he has played this year for Philly, even against the Rams 3 weeks ago, and Hurts had just 179 yards, A.J. Brown still went over this number. And Joe, it's not just the public perception or the narrative. The Steelers are the 4th best rushing defense in the NFL. It's part of the reason that despite the passing attack not being lethal, Philly is still winning games. They have a record-setting running back in Saquon Barkley. I think the Steelers slow that down ever so slightly, forcing Philly to throw. If Hurts is going to throw, I think first and foremost, he looks to A.J. Brown over his longest reception prop of 26.5 yards.
And I think that's how you beat Pittsburgh. You're not going to try to outmuscle Pittsburgh in the trenches and try to push them around. I think what you do is you pull the ball out and you drop back and throw, and I think that's exactly what we're going to see from Jalen Hurts. I'm willing to make a bet, unlike Deebo Samuel last night, that A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, whatever that was or is after this game, we will never hear of it again, Ben.
I would, well, see, I don't know about never again, because A.J. Brown has done this numerous times in his career. He is committed to the bit of a number 1 wide receiver. It is his lifestyle. And Deebo had his chances last night, probably goes over his yardage prop if he catches that ball in the 3rd quarter and then runs for the 20 yards into the end zone. He did not. All right, we end out our Week 15 Pick 6 combining forces for a 2-leg 6-point teaser. Joe, you go first.
I think it's simple. I mean, in these spots, Ben, I'm going to be looking for a team that, as an underdog, that I think can win this game outright, thus making, well, the choice rather easy. We did it last week with Seattle getting points. We thought Seattle was a live dog. Well, I'm doing it this week with the Buffalo Bills, because I think the Buffalo Bills are absolutely a live dog to win this game outright. I don't see this either way being anything more than a 1-score game, Ben. So the fact that I can get 8.5 over a touchdown with the Buffalo Bills, where if push comes to shove and the ball's in Josh Allen's hands, I'm feeling pretty good about taking the 8.5 with the Buffalo Bills for my half of the teaser.
I think it's a great look through 2 key numbers. I'll do the same for the Commanders, a 7.5-point favorite in New Orleans against Jake Haener now in the Saints. I'll take them down through 2 key numbers, through a touchdown, through a field goal, lay a 1.5, basically win the game outright. I expect the Commanders to do that. All right, quickly here, let's recap our pick 6s for Week 15 so everybody gets everything all at once, Joe.
All right, here we go. Anytime touchdown scorer, Josh Allen for me. I like the Browns as my money line underdog. I'm looking at the under in the Dolphins and Texans game. Alt line, look for Jamar Chase to get 2 or more touchdowns at a pretty good plus price. Yardage prop, I think Jaden Daniels goes off. I do like the Bills as my half of the teaser.
I go Isaiah Pacheco to hit Pater. Bucks to pull the upset in L.A. against the Bolts. Giants team total under 13.5. Patriots alt team total over 23.5. A.J. Brown longest reception. The Commanders in the teaser. Have a great weekend, everybody. The early line returns on Monday.